Hello, my name is Elke Dall. I have the pleasure to welcome you in this opening ceremony of the last public meeting of the project Using Science in Diplomacy for Addressing Global Challenges that I had the pleasure to coordinate in the past years. We were aiming to research and support the EU and the global science diplomacy approaches, and bringing together the two worlds of science and diplomacy, where we saw that science diplomacy really needs science and diplomacy literacy. We have done that for 3 years and actually 4 more months due to some COVID extension. The journey started with a proposal to the EU's framework program for research and innovation, Horizon 2020, in 2017. And from January 2018 to actually next month, April, we had the pleasure to work together with the 10 partners that the consortium brought together. They were coming from different areas, like from universities, international organizations. We included a diplomatic training academy. We had agencies that are implementing science diplomacy, and we also had some associated partners coming from all over the world, joining this dream team of people that were working together throughout those years on, amongst other things, 9 social scientific case studies that were dealing with infectious diseases, food security, cybersecurity, water diplomacy. We have looked at Sesame as a research infrastructure and at some instruments like the joint programming or flagships, and also open science diplomacy, and how our topic of science diplomacy is influencing these instruments. And lastly, also science advice, where the colleagues who were dealing with that case study looked at the specificities of fisheries. From those 9 case studies, we did a transversal analysis where we came up then with 10 matters, like what matters in science diplomacy. We looked at governance systems and instruments, but also at what role plays geography or individuals in the concept. We had some writings about the levels and scales that are in this, that we saw in the cases. We looked at the values and interests, and also how stakeholders are using science diplomacy, maybe sometimes very implicit and don't call it like that. And also how timing and rhythm influences the process. Out of all that, we had 14 key conceptual and policy papers that you can find on our website. Last one I would like to highlight is the new protocol for science diplomacy that just came out. But we're also calling for critical assessments or evaluation of science diplomacy actions. There's a policy brief on this topic. And we contributed to the definition of what is a science diplomat and what are the necessary skills for that. And so we also produced 37 key training outputs. The major one, a massive open online course, but we also had in-person trainings and webinars. And there is now a toolkit for trainers that in case you want to teach science diplomacy, you can also use with separate training materials developed. These offers reached already more than 6,000 interested users, and those were coming, certainly that we know, from more than 100 countries. We also were invited at least 55 times to speak at international events. Some of you might recognize the acronyms that I put on the slides, but I'm certainly not going to go into details, but we have been quite intensively speaking also at our own events. So this is the third in a series of networking meetings. The first one resulting in the Madrid Declaration, the second one in a policy report, and this third one we have about 1,000 registrations, so we are super pleased. And my short pitch actually also ends with the biggest number. So we have 230,000 visits on our website. With this, I welcome you to the event, SciDeepNet 2021. And we have also Cecilia Cabello with us, who is the local host, so to say, from the Spanish Foundation for Science and Technology.
Thank you. Thank you, Elke, for the nice introduction to the conference and to the summary of the project. And welcome to you all, of those connected all over the world, to the S4D4C Final Conference. One of the opportunities that COVID-19 has brought is the possibility to have a much wider audience and participation than in a physical conferences. Obviously, more than 1,000, like Elke said, people have registered to this conference, exceeding our expectations. So we're really excited. The Spanish Foundation for Science and Technology, FECYT, the partner for the S4D4C project, is somehow the local host, like Elke said, for this final event. And FECYT is the leading organization of this global network meeting. And we're really excited about this, the next days to come. It is an honor for me to be opening this big week of science diplomacy, which is the result of many years of intense collaboration and networking of the S4D4C partners and friends. A long way has been since then, since we launched the December 2018 in the Madrid Declaration on Science Diplomacy with more than 200 signatures to show the main principles to foster science diplomacy worldwide. So it's been a long time, but we've advanced much. Since then, we have worked for more than 3 years with rigor and passion on the topic, science diplomacy, which has raised the interest of very many different communities, diplomatic, research, policymakers, as a tool to better integrate efforts, knowledge, and visions towards jointly addressing global challenges. In my view, the beauty of SD4C is that it has worked in very many different levels: the academic research, policy analysis, training on science diplomacy, and professional networking. It has managed to bring together academics, practitioners, diplomats, and policymakers with different views sometimes, and contrasting views, into the project. And we are the true believers of this mix of expertise being the key to science diplomacy becoming a crucial element in international relations. The Spanish Foundation for Science and Technology, FECYT, has been a perfect platform for our experience in science diplomacy at the national level to share, to improve, and to contribute to a joint EU vision on this matter. For a number of years now, FECYT has worked with the Ministry of Science and Innovation and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, European Union and Cooperation in bridging the gap between both the scientific and the diplomatic worlds, and in bringing the scientific perspective into our foreign affairs policy. By joining the S4D4C consortium, we have been capable of bringing our expertise and the vision to the European level in where we think science diplomacy can have a global impact towards addressing global challenges. For the EU to integrate science diplomacy into the wider policy goals, we are recommending a number of actions in different spheres. Knowledge as a fundamental dimension in policymaking, governance with no silos, as global challenges have no silos, building alliances at the international level, rethinking institutions to make them more agile, adaptive, and responsive to global challenges, and finally, people, as we need to train professionals capable of connecting the dots from different communities. These spheres will articulate the debate in the upcoming days, where you will be enjoying the conference full of experts from all over the world. We have over 75 speakers. It will be a great opportunity for the S4D4C consortium to keep gathering input from the science diplomacy community, which has been at the core of our work during this year. I invite you to network, to get to know, and even if it's virtually, to all these colleagues that you have always wanted to meet. We at S4D4C hope this meeting will give the necessary impulse to keep working together after the project ends. S4D4C finishes, but the EU and global science diplomacy community stays and demands a strengthened energy towards addressing global challenges. I wish you a fruitful day. I wish you a fruitful conference. I'll give the floor back to Elke again, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Cecilia. I see you get some applause here as well. And we are now starting with a short intervention. We're very pleased that the Commissioner, Gabriel, has provided us with a short intervention that has been recorded. So it's just about to be coming up. I don't know if she was already speaking. Now.
Gentlemen, dear friends, allow me to start by congratulating you also on behalf of my colleague, the High Representative Josep Borrell, on the successful completion of your project. Over its 3 years duration, the S4D4C project has produced many positive results, from the Madrid Declaration to the new protocol for science diplomacy. As you know, this was possible thanks to our Research and Innovation Framework Program, Horizon 2020. The purpose was to obtain scientific evidence on how to best progress in ecological and digital transitions, using science diplomacy tools in line with our citizens' concern. This shows how much science diplomacy is a priority for us. And this priority will continue in Horizon Europe, our next research framework program for the period 21-27. Because more than ever, we need to address global challenges together by looking at their scientific dimension. The current COVID-19 crisis accelerated worldwide awareness that only a sound scientific advice and efficient collaboration can help understanding the challenges we are facing today. And only knowledge-based policymaking can bring solutions to them. Science can only work if embedded in a true scientific culture that respects fundamental values such as academic freedom. We have underlined this important element in our recent European Research Area communication, and I'm happy to see that you fully endorse this. We need the same values in science, diplomacy, and politics. We know today that the disinformation is a real threat, and that's why scientists, just like diplomats and policymakers, need to be equipped with skills to allow them to face this unprecedented scale of threats. Over the past months, we have translated knowledge on science diplomacy into concrete actions. The establishment of the COVID-19 data platform to enable rapid collection and sharing of available research data, open to all our international partners. The organization of the Coronavirus Global Response and the Global Pledging Summit. The concrete international collaboration with key partners such as Japan or Morocco, with the signature of letters of intent or administrative arrangements. The organization of the first ministerial meeting between European and African research ministers. And these are just a few examples. Our actions will not stop here. We are currently working on a communication titled Global Approach to Research, Innovation, Education and Youth, where science diplomacy will be at its core. To conclude, and on behalf of the High Representative too, let me also inform you that the European External Action Service last year appointed for the first time a Science and Technology Advisor. This will allow us to continue to strengthen the role of science, technology and innovation in our foreign and security policies. Thank you very much.
Well, obviously, we thank Commissioner Gabriel for this intervention that she recorded, and also for the article that she provided a little bit earlier last year. To set the tone for our conference, I would like now to ask the audience to freely use the chat function. I see that there's already something going on, so please feel free to kind of discuss as well through this, and to get involved with our panel through the questions and answers button. So this is really explicitly and warmly welcomed. I did prepare a few questions to our panelists, but we really want also to take on the board the questions that you have. We want to be inclusive and interactive in this SciDipNet 2021. And as our project was European Union science diplomacy for addressing global challenges, the first opening session includes 3 panelists that I just briefly introduce. We wanted to bring together the level of the European stakeholders and the global challenges. So Mrs. Signe Ratso is a representative of DG Research and Innovation. She's Deputy Director General and also the Chief Negotiator for the upcoming large-scale EU framework program Horizon Europe. Jian Liu is a director at the Science Division of the UNEP, the United Nations Environmental Programme, and Christine de Peyron represents the European External Action Service, where she is the Deputy Managing Director of the Department for Human Rights, Global and Multilateral Affairs. With the panelists, we aim to shed light on how to identify most important thematic priorities, how to bring science into the international policymaking process, and how to develop joint science programs with different international partners, setting the right priorities. And first, maybe to again also highlight the continued and fundamental support that DG Research and Innovation has provided. All this would not have been possible without Horizon 2020. We would like also to invite Mrs. Signe Ratso. We heard the Commissioner giving some examples of putting science diplomacy into practice. And as a keynote speaker, I would like to invite you warmly for like 5 minutes of a short intervention. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Elke, for your kind introduction. Distinguished guests, experts, and colleagues, it is my great pleasure to participate in this opening conversation together with Jian from the United Nations and Christine de Peyron, my colleague from the European External Action Service, and to do that under the steer and chairing of Elke. First of all, I'd like to congratulate the whole project team. We've already heard some very impressive figures. Now, I'd also like to congratulate you for the substantial advancements, namely in developing the concept of science diplomacy, and in particular for your final report calling for systemic change towards a European Union science diplomacy for addressing global challenges, which is also including interesting policy recommendations. The project brought such precious and timely insights on science diplomacy, also thanks of the support provided from Horizon 2020, as you already mentioned. In the last few years, science diplomacy is progressively emerging as a strategic opportunity for Europe to reinforce its global leadership, notably in the design, setup and implementation of 3 work strands, which are known as diplomacy for science, science for diplomacy, and science in diplomacy. And I believe that these different notions will also be discussed during the days of the conference. The positioning of science diplomacy as an instrument in foreign policy already today offers interesting advantages. For example, opening up to association of third countries to EU framework programs can play a significant role. In fact, association to EU's framework program is itself a profound vehicle of science diplomacy because it's the closest form of international cooperation. Association offers a systemic and lasting engagement with partners across the wide range of topics in EU program. It also creates a bond that usually outlives a single financial cycle. And it also builds strong institutional relations, as the partners can also participate as observers in governance bodies of Horizon Europe. Thus, they are able to shape the program as well as its priorities. And most notably, association is not an end in itself. Its purpose is precisely to enable collaboration in order to achieve EU's goals. and also to serve our common priorities. Research Horizon Europe is the largest research and innovation fund in the world. It has unparalleled thematic scope, and therefore association to this unique program allows us to seamlessly work with partner countries on green agenda on one day, on digital transformation on another, and global health at the same time, just to give you a few examples. So opportunities of this instrument are vast, and the results are really impressive to come. Moreover, many associated countries also see a close affiliation to our program as a sign of privileged political relations with the EU, which over time also lead to closer policy and regulatory alignment in many areas. As we know, up to date, we have 16 different countries which have already been associated to the previous program, Horizon 2020, and they come from the proximity of the EU. In this context, association has been an instrument helping the transition of the enlargement and neighborhood countries, also at the same time contributing to a more stable, resilient and prosperous future for us. Now, for the first time, the new program also gives a possibility for the countries from further away with whom we share a high level of research and innovation, but also the same values. They also have an opportunity to be associated to our program. This opens up really cooperation opportunities on a global scale. Science diplomacy is also an effective tool for member states. I guess that there are several participants also from our member states participating in this conference. So together with the European institutions, they can also engage with partners across the globe and use science to advance the dialogue, policy dialogues at different levels. So in a way, science diplomacy is becoming a core element of the DNA of European science. It also matches well with the newly established framework of ERA communication, notably its geopolitical dimension, with the objective to protect, promote EU vital interest and sovereignty in strategic technology areas and critical infrastructures. Now, the communication, a new era for research and innovation, underlies also the positive role of association for both the EU as well as the associated countries. So really, we believe that science can bring the best out of human cooperation. We have seen how people work to come together to work together. They are putting their differences aside as they are driven by a shared curiosity and also to drive to excel. Because we know that our program is also a program of excellence science. International research infrastructures are another example of that very fruitful collaboration. You already hinted at Sesame in your presentation. Really, this is a big infrastructure synchrotron in Jordan that brings together such countries like Cyprus, Egypt, Iran, Israel, Pakistan, the Palestinian Authority, and Turkey. And this is the only synchrotron in the Middle East, and the EU has supported it financially. But we also facilitated technology transfer and training from European synchrotrons. So it's really a shiny example how science diplomacy can open new communication channels. Just to give another example, this is the Square Kilometer Array Observatory, which is in Africa, in South Africa. This is the infrastructure, the biggest radar telescope with nearly 2,000 dishes and over 130,000 antennas also stations, more than 500 stations of Western Australia. So it really brings together 17 nations from Asia, Africa, Australia, Europe, and North America. Now, just to conclude, we believe in the logic, efficiency, but also uniting and inspiring power of science diplomacy, as this is a useful instrument for modeling, addressing complex challenges, but also building constructive knowledge-based political partnerships globally. So the EU is a strong leader in science diplomacy. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Super interesting points. Thank you for highlighting the association as a vehicle. I think that's indeed a very important instrument and very exciting to monitor that one. I would nevertheless encourage probably the audience again to also post questions to Mrs. Ratso, but now invite Jian because we wanted to bring the challenge of multilateralism and the perspective of the United Nations into the discussion. So the agencies play an extremely important role, and he will discuss with us a little bit the sets of challenges that are related to environment and climate change, where it's his field of expertise.
Thank you very much, Ms. Edo. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Madam Ratso, Madam Perron, my co-panelist, good afternoon, good evening, or good morning, wherever you are. Thank you very much for inviting me to this important forum. I would like also to congratulate the project team for having done so much, wonderful job on the science diplomacy. And I must say that these are quite relevant to what we do in UNEP, in United Nations Environment Program. So we should discuss after this meeting how we can work together to strengthen the science policy. In our term, is a science policy interface, if you like. Okay, so normally we use the term science policy interface at UNEP, and this is to mobilize this and use the science to enable member countries for policy citing through, in the UN, in the context of UN, through a multilateral platform, such as a multilateral environment convention agreement, like the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. So actually the UN is there to work with all governments and guided by governments to tackle global challenges. And actually the UN, if you trace back, started from sort of peacekeeping, and then further development and poverty alleviation, of course, back to 1972. The UN decided to set up this environment program. And basically, UNEP is a baby of the Stockholm Environment and Human Development Conference. And there was such a declaration calling for the setup of UNEP. And next year, actually, will be the 50th anniversary of the establishment of UNEP. So that's, but in the last almost 50 years, we've been striving to mobilize and use science to inform policy, and this is a core mandate that is given by the government, by our member countries, actually. So now, as you could see from the science, we are talking about new challenges, the three big challenges in front of us. They are not only environmental challenges, they are development challenges, they are challenges for sustainability of the whole human being and the planet as a whole. And the climate change the biodiversity and nature loss, and pollution and waste. And these three challenges are really the bottlenecks for us to realize the sustainable development goals. So I hope you are aware that the Secretary General of the UN, Mr. Guterres, together with my boss, Ms. Signe Anderson, the Executive Director of UNEP, they launched a report, a new report called a synthesis report of global environmental scientific assessments, making peace with nature. And that was on the 18th of February. And for the UN, for UNEP, on the environment, this is so far the largest and the highest level science for policy event, or the science diplomacy event, actually, because the Secretary General himself has become a speaker why we should work together to tackle these three problems, and why we should track back to the root causes of these three problems, like unsustainable consumption and production, and how we could change our behavior, how could we transform our society and the economy to achieve green growth and green development. So that's one upfront example, but this report is based on 25 global assessments, including the famous ones like the IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. I will just read out the acronyms. Just give you an example. The Global Resources Outlook, the Global Environment Outlook, the Global Chemicals Outlook, the Global Biodiversity Outlook, and the IPBES reports, and so on and so forth. I won't mention them all. But this the sort of credibility of this report, why you should believe it, it is a synthesis, of the cutting edge key findings of the global assessments, all the 25 assessments putting together. So the conclusion is that we must transform ourselves by all means, okay? And we must address this challenge together in the context of sustainable development. So I must, at this point in time, thank the European Union for having financially supported this process that went on for the last 2 years, and together with the government of Norway. Let me also give you another example, if you like, the sort of science policy interface in the on the climate change issues. You know that the IPCC was set up, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change was set up in 1988. And in 1992, the governments already decided to establish the framework convention, UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. And this is not a sort of a decision from the government from nowhere. It was purely based on the IPCC first assessment report. And when the second assessment report was produced back to 1995, the Kyoto Protocol was agreed, 1997. And more recently, the Paris Agreement, as you recall, that was agreed at the COP 21 back to 2016. This is something that based on, if you relate to the key targets that was set by the governments, the 2 degrees Celsius or 1.5, and the 2 degrees Celsius, I must say, is one of the scenarios that was presented by the IPCC fifth assessment. So you can see the clear link between science and policy through a multilateral process to tackle the global challenges. And I could go on if time allows me, but I must conclude that A successful science policy interface or science diplomacy should include the three key elements. One is the science credibility. Two is the policy uptake, and three is the political legitimacy. And governments has to buy it, and the policy making process have to use it, and scientifically it must be credible. But linking these three needs all this kind of tools and methods, and that's why, back to my starting point, I would like to, as the director of science division of UNEP, also in charge of science policy foundational program, we'll continue working on this front together. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I'm sure we would like to listen to you and your experience as the Deputy Secretary that you have been of the IPCC, and also the experiences that you had as a UNEP's chief scientist and so on. So I'm sure there would be a lot more of these kind of science diplomacy experiences to share. And again, encouraging the address your question to UNEP, what the audience would be interested most. We have a session for Q&A after Mrs. De Perron's intervention, who is representing the European External Action Service, as I mentioned. And I would like to hand the floor to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm very excited to be here, and my greetings to my co-panelists and to you, Elke. And I also want to send very warm greetings from our Secretary General, Stefano Sannino, who would have loved to be here, but unfortunately cannot. I mean, I think this conference in itself is really, evidence of the fact that science diplomacy has made a great leap forward in recent years, not least through projects like this one, which is very impressive in terms of the results that you have achieved. I mean, we've seen, there was reference already by Commissioner Gabriel to the Madrid Declaration, but also the more recent work and the training materials that you presented in the beginning that have been developed by the project. So I would like to express our sincere admiration and thanks for this work that you've been doing. The European External Action Service is still a rather young organization. We just celebrated our 10th anniversary. So we are still discovering the full potential of science diplomacy, but we are certainly making good use of it. With global challenges that become more and more interdependent and systemic, science and technology are really playing an increasing role, and ever increasing, I would say, both as drivers and enablers of diplomatic action. Commissioner Gabriel pointed to the disinformation situation that we are in. Evidently, we're in a world now where facts count. Facts, science counts to be convincing. We cannot only, be persuasive on the basis of our values and our principles, which are there, which are very important, but we need the facts. I mean, we would like to describe, science diplomacy as a soft power tool, in a sense. I mean, tool is not a nice expression, but you get what I mean. It is soft power because of how it helps us to tackle global societal challenges, and also how it supports our external policies as European Union. And it's a mechanism for improving relations with key countries and regions. Of course, in the scientific community, you work beyond national borders on issues of common interest. So you're very well placed to support the emerging or non-conventional forms of diplomacy that require perhaps non-traditional alliances of nations, of sectors, and non-governmental organizations. You have also both Mr. Jian, you and Signe Ratso, you've pointed to areas where science or the interface with science is present. And I mean, I could mention, the digital agenda, like was mentioned before, the Arctic, maritime affairs, climate negotiations, as you mentioned. Let me also give as an example the European Green Deal. The Green Deal is a roadmap for turning climate and environmental challenges into opportunities to make the EU's economy sustainable. It sets very ambitious targets, including on reaching climate neutrality in Europe by 2050 and addressing the drivers of biodiversity loss in Europe, restoring degraded ecosystems, and adopting a zero pollution action plan for air, water, and soils. If we are to achieve these very bold targets that we've set up, we need a very sound scientific expertise from many different geoscience areas, including atmospheric, hydrological, oceanic, and soil system sciences, and we need strong international scientific cooperation. The research and innovation is absolutely key in accelerating the necessary transitions that we need to see. We need to be able to deploy and demonstrate solutions, and we need to engage citizens in social innovation. So research and innovation will help to drive and navigate the long-term systemic changes that we need if we are to create a cleaner and greener and fairer society. And science diplomacy will use international cooperation in research and innovation, and it will be the natural conduit to help as an instrument and a mechanism to improve relations with partner countries and regions. Also, of course, if we think of what is sometimes referred to as the Brussels effect, that is the influence of the European Union as a regulatory power. At the end of the day, it's scientists and engineers who develop technical standards that are very often an inspiration and adopted worldwide. In the European Commission, we of course have both DG Research and Innovation, and we have the Joint Research Centre, or a wide range of the EU-funded research projects that Signe and Ratso also referred to, which provide evidence for our policy making. We are, from the EIS side, very committed to using the best possible available science and evidence. And as the Commissioner Gabriel referred to, we have since last year, for the first time, a science and technology advisor, Mr. Jan Marco Müller. And we're really, really grateful for that. He plays a very important role. And we have seen it notably in the recent months as we grapple with the issue of vaccines and also narratives around vaccines, etc., where he can really help us to translate the science into the more political discourse and explain to us and help us underpin our decision making by science. But of course, it's not only in headquarters that we work with science. We have more than 140 EU delegations across the globe. Now, not at all of these have a science counselors, research and innovation counselors, but a number of them do. And they play a very important role because not only are they there to promote the European science on the ground, but they play a very important role in contributing to defining our cooperation opportunities with countries and regions. And they provide analysis for policy proposals, and they identify areas of cooperation. So all in all, science diplomas is really an essential part of our work in the European External Action Service, and it's likely to be even more so. And just to end, I'd like to mention as well that in the multilateral context, this is also key to us. And on the 17th of February, our Commission adopted a joint communication on multilateralism. And in that communication, it really demands that the EU should leverage its role as a global powerhouse in research and innovation to ensure that the multilateral action is informed by the best possible scientific evidence. And with that, I conclude. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Well, now I would like to sit with each of you with a coffee in some relaxed atmosphere and ask some more detailed questions on this and that interest me. I would like to nevertheless have a look at the Q&A. Maybe you did as well. I would like to tell Mr. Kolandowski that I'm sure through several projects there will be a continuation, and also that we, together with partners, are going to announce some continuation throughout this. We want to work together, and we want also to involve the stakeholders. We're very thankful for this openness, and we will be on particular session on day 5 about the legacy of the project. We want to launch something like a European Alliance on Science Diplomacy, so this is to be looked out for, and some discussions on that. Thank you for the question. Then we have an anonymous participant who has a direct question to Mrs. Ratso, and that's the second votist. So I hope you're comfortable to describe us a little bit more the ways that DG R&I is coordinating with your colleagues in the External Action Service and the science advice bodies.
Okay, many thanks, Elke. Now I think that there were already some elements which were mentioned. Christine certainly first mentioned our strategic, what are our strategies vis-a-vis, well, multilaterally, the latest communication on multilateralism. Commissioner Gabriel also mentioned another communication which is being drafted by the Commission, but certainly in very close cooperation with the External Action Service. That is the global approach to research, education, and youth. But also, certainly, we have the strategies vis-a-vis different areas of the world and different countries. When it comes to the, for instance, Western Balkans, who are already associated as acceding countries, the new communication which will be prepared for the neighborhood countries, but certainly we also have our strategies vis-a-vis different partners, strategic partners, where science diplomacy is one of the ways how to cooperate with these countries. Christine also mentioned that we already have in quite a few of our delegations where we have science counselors, and the science counselors then clearly work already on the spot with these countries, with different stakeholders, with the relevant ministers, but also research organizations, universities, and so on and so forth. Certainly, when it comes to cooperation with our member states, then we use the governance of Horizon Europe framework program, as mentioned, but also European research area. That's why I also refer to that, where we really have very high ambitions, really to make this European research area an area where the same values will be shared by all the countries, which would be part of that. And I think this is the underlying feature also for science diplomacy. Now I can continue on that, but I'd like just to give one very practical example, which is demonstrating the value of this type of cooperation. And well, clearly this comes from the area of COVID-19 pandemic, which has demonstrated more clearly than ever the need for global cooperation and solidarity. And I could just mention a few areas there, or the first Horizon 2020 Era versus Virus Hackathon, which had multi-million investments of the EIB, namely in promising companies, fundraising, venturing in new treatments and vaccine solutions. Then the fundraising pledging event of the 4th of May last year, which was led by Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. And last but certainly not least, the recent design and launch of the HERA incubator, which is the new European biodefense preparedness plan against COVID-19 variants. Also bringing together researchers, biotech companies, manufacturing, from the EU and also globally, just to give a very practical example as well.
Thank you. I would like to, I think, go to the second most voted, if I haven't mistaken that yet here. And because that refers very much also to our project, I think it's probably from one of the colleagues. We have seen in our trainings that the young academics are very active in and very interested, young PhDs. And it's a little less the case for the diplomats. So here the question is, how can we make sure that the world of foreign policy sees the advantage of science diplomacy in an improved way?
Thank you. I guess that was directed to me, or I saw it in the Q&A. No, I think honestly, the fact that science is so important for our policymaking is becoming, more and more recognized. I don't think that all of our colleagues yet can set the name or put the name in science diplomacy to what it actually is. But that is clearly something that, I think will become more and more known. I think the best way to bring scientists and diplomats together is to create spaces in which you can have that interaction. I mean, clearly a conference such as this one is one thing, but maybe around specific topics. There can be, one can envisage, dedicated lectures or exchanges or training programs, or making scientific information really easily accessible and digestible for diplomats, because we're not scientifically trained. We tend to have another training, so making it digestible. But I think, that we would also be very open to have proposals for exchanges on given topics. And maybe we should also, take the initiatives ourselves to sometimes have some of these more out of the box discussions while we are preparing policy, as we do with civil society. We should perhaps do it more also with the scientific community. One thing I can tell you, and I'll end with that, is that our High Representative Vice President, Josep Borrell, he himself, I believe he has an engineering background, but he himself is incredibly attached to always receiving, facts, figures, data. So this is something we're really, emphasizing with all our colleagues, that when we prepare things for him, that, we need the facts, the figures, the data. So that is where, I think we are really realizing the importance of science and of science diplomacy. Thank you.
Thank you. That also answers and gives a few further suggestions of what's next, which was one of the questions as well. And then I would direct the next question also to Mr. Liu, because it talks about this bringing together of the different levels, a bit of multi-level governance, and the maybe hidden interests and tensions that are. We in the project sometimes talked about the national interest wave versus a common global goods wave of discussing science diplomacy. But the question here reads, like, how do you address possible tensions? Which ones do you think are the ones that are most prevalent in your work? How do you deal with sometimes difficult partners?
Thank you very much. Actually, many people see that UN is a platform for negotiation, and also many see that the multilateral sort of environment conventions, like a climate change convention, biodiversity convention, are the places to negotiate, which is good, which is fun, but also. These conventions and these mechanisms, including the UN Environment Assembly, they are also the platform to discuss solutions. Obviously, of course, at times, governments coming from different, parts of the world, from different kind of political system, from different kind of, natural situation and development levels, they would have differences, but the bottom line is that how the science could provide the basic facts for everybody to say that because the UN is there to address global challenges. And the starting point is pretty much to, present the facts. And of course, in the intergovernmental assessment process, there are also debates because experts from different backgrounds, be it from science, social science, be it from economics, be it from biophysical science, they have different views on certain issues. But through negotiations, these tensions could be overcome. So that's our experiences. But also in the negotiations, once there's a tension, each one of the parties, they are searching for the fact to support their points. But at the end, if they found they sort of, for example, our assessment reports, and they will come to the common, sort of ground to discuss for solutions. I would just say that I won't give examples because of time, but there are many, many examples. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We were indeed also just looking at the time. It's just 5 more minutes. I thank you very much because, well, we have to come to an end. My colleagues are going to present a little bit what's next in the conference. And it has been great having you here. I had more pages with questions prepared just in case there are no questions from the audience, panicking as I did. But now I can just thank you very much for this session, for your kind words. And I hand over to my colleague who is here with me, Lauriane Plumhans.
Hello, thank you, Elke. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. I'm Lauriane Plumhans, and together with my colleague Lorenzo Melchor, that you will see now when you will be able to speak, we're going to step into the shoes of Master of Ceremony for a few minutes and explain you what we have prepared for you during this whole week of Science Diplomacy Conference. I don't know what you think, Lorenzo, but I really have the feeling that this keynote session was really a great start to showcase to our attendees what they can expect, what great content they can expect this whole week. But the keynote sessions are only one type of session that we have organized for you, and we have many other types of sessions. And I think, Lorenzo, maybe you can explain the different types of sessions that one can expect this week.
Thanks, Lauriane. It has been indeed a very interesting opening ceremony, but allow me first to acknowledge that this week is the product of harnessing the collective intelligence of this wonderful S4D4C consortium. With the leadership of an amazing organizing committee and the commitment of all S4D4C members, we are bringing you this full week of discussions around science diplomacy. We've gathered over 120 key opinion leaders in the field who will be participating in more than 30 sessions in total. You are all welcome to attend to our plenary sessions, which will be running daily from 1 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. Central European Time. Following on the lessons learned from our 2 previous networking meetings in Madrid in 2018 and Berlin in 2019, these plenary sessions will be focused around, first, the use of knowledge for addressing global challenges on Monday. Second, the value of public governance with no silence on Tuesday. Third, the impact of alliances between multiple stakeholders on Wednesday. The key role of transboundary organizations in bringing science and diplomacy together, as well as the capacity building exercises that are required to train the current and next generation of science diplomats. This will happen on Thursday. And let's not forget the plenary sessions with governmental representatives on Tuesday, delegates from different intergovernmental organizations on Wednesday, or the plenary talk delivered by Nobel Prize Peter Siege on Thursday. Friday will be the last day, and we'll bring this conference to an end with a discussion entirely focused on European science diplomacy, the future of the science diplomacy in the European Union, and the potential legacy of S4D4C. On top of these plenary sessions, please join our satellite events. Partners from S4D4C will run 6 parallel sessions on Tuesday afternoon and Wednesday morning to discuss about the theory of practice of science diplomacy, the role of universities, open science, environment, water diplomacy, or the science diplomacy strategies in the Western Balkans area. But even more, we wanted to get this opportunity open for the whole global science diplomacy community. So we had 2 public calls, and our evaluation committee selected a total of 6 stakeholders parallel sessions on Tuesday morning and Wednesday afternoon with our sister project INSIDE, Arts for Science for Cultural Diplomacy, the Mariya Sklodowska-Curie Alumni Association, the Sao Paulo Innovation and Science Diplomacy School, the Agency for the Promotion of European Research, APER, and the Inter-American Institute for Global Research. The evaluation committee also selected 12 early career researchers and policy professionals for our science diplomacy community flash talk session on Thursday. And if this weren't enough, we've got some social hours, haven't we, Lorraine?
Yes, we do, Lorenzo. You're right. We have 2 social hours planned this week because obviously this is a virtual event and we really wanted to recreate the opportunities that one could have during an actual physical event. And for this, we have 2 social hours, one on Tuesday, one on Thursday after the plenary sessions and the satellite sessions, if I'm not mistaken. And the first one would happen tomorrow and is called Cocktails with the Science Diplomacy Community. And there we will showcase one of the features of this conference, which is the bilateral networking meeting. I will come back to that later, which I think we can maybe take off the slide at the moment, sorry. Thank you for technical assistance. And the second social hour happens on Thursday and will be chaired by our colleagues Maddalena Lamura and Marga Gual-Sola, and we'll really try to create this connection between attendees. And really, the session will be dedicated to socializing between attendees, which is less possible during our plenary sessions. But we also try to create additional types of interactions between attendees and panelists. And this happens in a very specific way, right, Lorenzo?
Yes, actually, if you feel like having breakfast with us at our conference, please bring your warm coffee or tea or anything and attend our 2 breakfast sessions with Gianmarco Müller, current Science and Technology Advisor to the European External Action Service, on Thursday early morning. But also on Friday early morning, you'll have the opportunity to have your breakfast with COST, the European Cooperation on Science and Technology. You may find all this information in our virtual states provided by Eventia. Lorian, could you please give us a tour to the platform and its functionalities?
Yes, so you are now watching this conference on the virtual stage. And on the virtual stage, you have many different functionalities. You have the agenda, you also have an integrated chat function and so on. The most important one you need to know is, the one you are doing right now, you're visualizing the session, but also there's the bilateral networking function that you can use to really connect right away with another attendee. Yes. We are showing right now how to do so. So you really need to look at the list of panelists that you will see on the left panel on the virtual stage. And you, for example, here I tapped Lorenzo because I wanted to have a bilateral meeting with Lorenzo. And I requested the meeting, let's say for 10 a.m. Then Lorenzo will get an email and you will have to request or decline this invitation. And if both parties agrees to meet at a certain time, you just have to show up on the virtual stage, click on your agenda where the meeting you have scheduled will show, and yeah, start talking to each other and have this kind of conversation you could have over a buffet or with a cup of coffee during an actual physical event. So as I said, we also have an integrated chat function where you can really use this as a message board to post any events or articles or so on that you think may interest the science diplomacy community. Lastly, we also have a short survey that is available on the virtual stage, also on the left panel, that we encourage you to make use of, because we really want to get your feedback on this conference since we worked so much for it. I think now that kind of shows you what we've tried to communicate in this conference is to have a lot of different sessions, a lot of different interaction options, even though we had to make it online. But there's also one more way we tried to bring different words together. And I think Lorenzo can surely introduce the work, the special work of our graphic artist. Go ahead.
Sure, Lorian. S4D4C believes in the transmedia scope of our project. And so you will be able to see during all our plenary sessions a graphic, how our professional illustrator makes a graphic summary of the session. Allow me to introduce you to our graphic artist, Javier Alonso from Dibujando Charlas. Javier, please tell us a little bit about your work and what you have drawn out of our opening ceremony. Are you there, Javier, with us? Javier?
Yes, I'm here. Hi all. Okay. I've taken notes first of the opening with some phrases that I have highlighted, but I have focused more on the phrases that the keynotes has mentioned during the talk. So about the Horizon 2020, the Green Agenda, or the European Green Deal, the Bali Declaration mentioned, the FECYT, also that how the approach to the collaboration of the whole science diplomacy, and how, for example, this was really important for me, the global cooperation and solidarity for the HERA incubator for the health environment research agenda for Europe. So it was quite interesting.
Okay, thank you, Javier. Javier will be here with us throughout all the plenary sessions and will be making these graphic summaries. Lorian, you've got something else to say?
Yes, I think I will shortly introduce the two contests that we have running this week. We have a contest of the most avid Twitter user making use of SciDipNet 2021 hashtag, sorry. And also another contest of the most avid networker. So the person that makes the most use of our networking, bilateral networking meeting option. And the prize is this wonderful cup that you can see, an S4D4C cup. I think it's really time to wrap up. Maybe Lorenzo, you want to say a last sentence and welcome our attendee to join the next session.
Yes, please, everyone do enjoy this week of science diplomacy discussions, engage with the whole science diplomacy community through all the different means that we have provided to you. And now it's time to wrap up this session, and please click on play to engage with the next session, Harnessing Knowledge for Global Challenges. Thank you very much.